Welcome to this edition of Down the Right Field Line with Marlins Nation. The Marlins head home to face the Nats, the Mets, and the Brewers to check out all the highlights. And is Major League Baseball extending instant replay? All that and more coming up next. Welcome to this edition of Down the Right Field Line with Marlins Nation. The Marlins just finished a West Coast swing against the Rockies, the Dodgers, and the Diamondbacks, and now head home on a 9-game homestand, which brings 2 against the Nats, 3 against the Mets, and 4 against the Brewers. Starting off in the first one, you had Ricky Nolasco in Game 1, lights out, throws a complete game shutout. And the Marlins got to Steven Strasburg, which was great to see. The Marlins win that one. And Game 2, not so much. It was Stanton's bobblehead night. So, energy's going in the crowd, I guess. And nothing happened. Harper homered twice. Harper got ejected. Harper being Harper. Bryce Harper, that is. And we lose the second game. But I wanted to touch up on Ricky Nolasco. As we all Marlin fans know, this guy has been Jekyll and Hyde. I think that's the best way to put it. He does lead the Marlins in career wins and career strikeouts. He's a model of consistency with the exception of the injury year in 2007. Consistency in terms of health and making his starts. Not so much consistency in performance after the 2008 season. Since then, it's been hit or miss with the guy. And what do you do? Because now Nolasco's on his last year of the contract in 2013. Do we keep him for another year? Do we send him packing? Rob, it's kind of one of those difficult things because you finally have somebody up there in Marlins records that you want to hold on to because you want to keep those numbers going up, but does it make sense?
It's really hard decision for the Marlins front office. I saw an excerpt that some Yankee fan wrote when the Marlins extended Ricky Nolasco a couple of years ago, and they said only the Marlins would extend somebody with an ERA, a career ERA over 4, and most of his years his ERA is even over 5. His ERA doesn't do him justice to the kind of stuff this guy has. When you look at, let's say, an Andrew Miller type person who has a really high ERA but can't command the strike zone, and then you look at Ricky Nolasco, who lately has had really high ERAs, but he pounds the strike zone. His thing is just mixing up his pitches. He has a great fastball, a nasty curveball, but he just can't pull it all together. And that's the biggest problem with him. It's one of those things that is almost like JJ's situation, where it's like he has so much talent, but this year it's just not coming through. The same thing with JJ. JJ has so much talent, he's not pulling it through this year. And you'll see spurts of it. Just like you mentioned, Rafi, complete game shutout. A great thing to see out of Ricky. Do you trade this guy, get some value out of him? Do you extend him, or do you just let him finish out his contract? You never know. Maybe you keep him all of next year, and if he does perform, then you extend him, and then, if he doesn't perform, you just let him walk. I would say see if you can extend him at a lower price, almost like arbitration type thing. Get him for $3 or $5 million. I mean, that's how much another pitcher of his caliber is going to cost the Marlins anyways. And then to trade for him, you're going to need to start trading prospects. So, get them at a reasonable price, extend them, and see if at some point he can get out of this. But you're just going to have to continue working at him because he does show some really good stuff.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, Rob. I mean, again, barring that he has I think lights out. I mean, I know it's too much to ask for, but he has to really wow the organization and really baseball. I mean, or else he's going to end up with a team that's just rebuilding. And I know that everybody's thinking out there, well, that's kind of us. I hope not. I hope not. I hope that we're contending next year. He's going to have to just go out there and outperform, outduel everybody. And quite frankly, I don't see that happening. I mean, we've seen year after year the same thing. He'll start off the season great. He'll have a rough month of May or June, something like that, rough patch. And then from there, it's on hit or miss, hit or miss, hit or miss. Perhaps, I mean, you have guys like Wade LeBlanc, Nate Eovaldi, and Jacob Turner vying for a rotation spot. And if they somehow wow the organization and pitch well at the end of this season, then maybe that makes the decision a lot easier. But and it's one of those things where Ricky's a gamer, but I don't know if I could see him in a Marlins uniform next season. So the Marlins welcome the New York Mets for 3 games. Game 1, you have R.A. Dickey. That's right, you guessed it. Marlins lost. R.A. Dickey was unstoppable. In Game 2, Marlins had the lead, 9th inning. We bring in our closer, Steve Cishek. Blows the save, allows 4 runs in the 9th. Bell comes in, strikes out the last batter. A little ironic there. We'll see what goes on with that situation. We're not going to get into it. We've gotten into it I don't know how many times. And in Game 3, Mark Burley up and allows a grand slam to Jason Bay, who knew. And we got swept. So, you know, it's something that very uneventful series, but there's just something that I wanted to talk about, and that's that the September call-ups arrived, and so the Marlins are able to call up as many as, you know, until they get to the 40-man roster, expand to the 40-man roster, and Ozzie and the organization have been calling up guys for the bullpen, arms for the bullpen, and there's nothing wrong with that. Guys like Tom Kohler and A.J. Ramos and Dan Jennings coming back. But there is a problem where you don't call up any hitters to come off the bench. In many situations, Marlins, you know, maybe down 2-1 or 5-3, something like that, with a runner on base in the 5th inning and the pitcher spot up, and they want to get something going, and then, you know, you bring up Austin Kearns to pinch hit. Now you're down to a 3-man bench. And then what happens? You're handcuffed in the 9th inning, 8th, 9th inning, when you need another hitter. Or in the situation where you're going to give a player a day off, you can't do it. So now you have Dobbs and Kearns running around, and, you know, they're banged up from the whole season. So things like that you have to keep in mind. I mean, I don't know why Ozzie isn't doing that. I guess I'll have to ask him. You know, it's one of those things that it bothers me, Rob, and we were talking about earlier on what Major League Baseball was talking about, is doing away with the 40-man roster.
Yeah, it's actually a thing that they're discussing in which essentially you can still call up everybody on the 40-man roster in the big leagues, in the clubhouse. But the new restriction would be that you would limit the amount of people that are active for the game to 25. So let's say somebody in the bullpen goes 3 innings. You know you're not going to use them the next day. In September, this is not for the entire season. In September, you can deactivate him, activate another minor leaguer, and then use him that game. And then you can just, you know, rotate them as you want after each game. During the game, obviously, you're set to that 25-man roster, which it would make it interesting. I understand the contenders might be a little bit upset when they're going to face a team such as the Marlins or a team that's in really last place like the Astros or something that are just kind of preparing for next year and giving guys opportunities. You know, I can see them being upset if they go to face, and then each time a lefty comes up, you bring in a lefty from the bullpen. You have 10 lefties out there. So it makes sense to do this move. It's something I'm fairly certain will pass, and then next year it'll probably be implemented. It's a good idea, but as far as the Marlins are concerned, they need to have more guys on the bench. Not simply because you want to win games, but you want to give guys opportunities. Look at how bad of a season this has been. Terrible offense. Bring guys from the minor leagues and fill up that bench. That way you can give those guys opportunities to hit. You'd be surprised. Somebody like Ruggiano, if you didn't give him a shot to come up, not just because they needed an outfielder, but because you want to give guys opportunities to hit in the big leagues and get all the rookie, fuzzy feelings out of the way. That way next year, if we do sign some guys and we are going after the playoffs, then you can bring them up and they can fit right into the big leagues. This is a time you want to do all these risky moves. So bring some of these guys up. I know a few of the minor leaguers have been, in the pennant race for the minor league pennants. But as soon as that's over, get these guys up here. Now, some guys you don't want to bring up. Like Yelich, top prospect of the Marlins. You want to make sure when you bring him up, he's ready. You don't want to rush him because then he's always going to have that feeling, oh, I failed in the big leagues. And then he's kind of branded like that for life. So take your time, but get some of these guys up in the big leagues. That way we can start, winning some ball games now, but also winning some ball games long term.
Rob, one of the September call-ups that have worked is a reliever named A.J. Ramos from AA Jacksonville. In the series against the Brewers, this guy was phenomenal in his debut, striking out the side, and not just the side. Let me tell you here, it was Ricky Weeks, Ryan Braun, and Aramis Ramirez. First time ever by a Marlin to strike out the side in his major league debut. This guy was phenomenal. He had the fastball going as high as 97, I believe, and a snapping slider that it looked like a Nintendo slider. I mean, this guy was amazing, and I saw, watching the game, they were showing him in the dugout, and he was just having a good time, talking to anybody, smiling, enjoying life, and then in the post-game interview, the same thing, and it's one of those guys that if he succeeds and he keeps doing well, why not? Why not have him in next year's bullpen? So that's a name to keep an eye on, a name that I'd like to see in next year's bullpen, and we'll see how that one goes. In that series, actually, against the Brewers, the Marlins split the series, winning the bookends of the series, the first game and the fourth game, losing the middle games of the series. Both of them, the Marlins had a lead late and blew it. And so that's what happened. Marlins split both that series and the season series. Remember, we split 4 games in Milwaukee early in July. So the Marlins split with Milwaukee 4-4 altogether. In other news in Major League Baseball, and we've talked about instant replay, mind you, before on this show, but I think Major League Baseball is seriously considering extending instant replay. The latest thing is that Major League Baseball is testing instant replay in both New York ballparks for the remainder of the season, and the replay is pretty much balls down the line, fair or foul. Rob, this is great, and I know we're purists, but I'm starting to turn into let's get the call right, and I think this is phenomenal. Do you agree with me, or what's your take?
Well, let me first explain exactly what it would be. Though what they're testing is very similar to what they use in tennis. If you're familiar with the tennis telecast, when there's a judgment call as far as whether the ball hit the line, outside, inside, whatever the case is, they go into this kind of neat camera database type thing that it has a camera, I believe it's like infrared or something like that, but it displays on the screen and it shows where that ball hit on the line. And I'm not too familiar with tennis rules, but I believe if it hits on the line it's considered out. In baseball it would be anywhere between hitting the line and fair territory, and they're testing it in New York, see how it works. I think if this works, this would be the furthest extent I would be comfortable with instant replay. It's good to have it there. You want to get the calls right. I'm guessing what would probably happen is if they do call it foul and then the umpire says it was fair, they would probably just call it a ground rule double or something like that, which then it gets a little bit hazy as far as, well, was the runner going to be able to score? And, you know, there's a lot of ways, but that's where you put in certain rules for those changes. As far as the way it would work, I'm fairly certain Major League Baseball would hire 30 more umpires. Each game would have an umpire in the kind of booth, I guess you can say, probably next to the official score. And, you know, replays would be a lot quicker. Any replay of a home run, just go to the booth, kind of like how football does it. So, I mean, it would add an extra element to the game. It might speed it up a little bit. With currently with a home run call, you probably waste 3 to 5 minutes just trying to see the replays and stuff. This might speed it up a little bit, that ball down the line. But then that's it. If you start calling, oh, the play at first base, did he touch the bag, all these different things, it just gets really ridiculous and it really gets out there, especially if now you get into balls and strikes. It's, you know, the human element's a part of the game. This would be an interesting add-on to it, but that's where you stop. Instant replay is to help the umpires, not to do their job.
That's a very interesting, Rob, but I do want to see trap ball calls. I think that's something very important in baseball that should be rectified, but that's my opinion. From all of us here at Down the Right Field Line, we'll leave you with our random video of the week, which we like to call
The Major League.
Later.